In this video, I'm going to explain to you about that guy and how you don't want to be that guy. If you've been playing games, war games, but could be board games or any kind of tabletop game, if you've been doing it at shops or at conventions, even tournaments, that kind of stuff, for any amount of time, you've probably run into that guy. A quick definition, that guy, and it can be that gal, technically, but that guy is somebody who is win at all costs. That is their main focus of playing the game. Now notice I said playing the game. We usually think of playing as fun, but generally they kind of don't. For some of them, it is the most fun to crush a noob, like somebody who's just started playing and has come into the store, maybe for a pickup game. They've got some stuff built, maybe it's even painted, and they're just kind of trying things out. And then sometimes that guy will come along and be like, yeah, I'll play. Well, let's just have a fun, friendly game. And then they bring out some sort of, tournament net list, and a net list, an internet list, something they found online because they didn't necessarily make it themselves. It was something that won some tournament somewhere or whatever. And they use that against the very new player who is still trying to figure out how the game works. And for them, that guy, that's enjoyment, crushing people. And it's not even necessarily that it's like a griefing thing like you get sometimes in like online video games. It's more of just look how I just beat them, so it was another win for me. But they're not thinking about the other person. And that seems to be generally the main issue with that guy, is that in them wanting to win at all costs, they will then not think about the person that they're playing against. And to be a good player, not necessarily someone who wins, but someone who is good at playing. Both parties come out of the game having a good time, which I think is frankly something that you should really think about. That person, if they're not paying attention to what their opponent's doing, that's not a good thing. The situation is you have to be constantly conscious of how your opponent is enjoying the game, not just how you are enjoying the game. In a perfect world, it's not just about whether or not you're having a good time, specifically if you're doing it at somebody else's, expense. There's plenty of people that I see when I watch like battle reports and things like that online who will roll really, really good, and then they will apologize a little bit, not a ton. Depends on the bat rep, depends on how well they know each other. But there are times when you're just like, you roll 3 6s and you're like, oh, I am sorry. You're still going to blow up that vehicle or whatever the deal is, but you at least, hopefully, depending on the dynamic, will kind of feel a little bad about how lucky you were, because a lot of these games, being dice games, they do really depend upon luck. And that takes something called empathy. And that guy generally kind of doesn't have empathy. They will kind of push the envelope in the rules. They may fudge some rules. Some of them will just out and out cheat because they want to win. It's something inside of them. I've always felt whenever I've played against that guy that they have to win because there's something wrong with their life in general, and they just need a win on this day. They need some sort of, up to compare against all of the rest of the down of their life. And that's, I'll take that. But some people don't like that. They don't like being crushed in that way, or having someone who's constantly like calling them on every little thing, but then every measurement is another half an inch longer than it should be, that kind of stuff. But I will take it, and I'll play and I'll be okay with it. But then after I'm done, there's a little black book up in my brain, and there's a little name now that's written in there and a line drawn through that name, and I won't play that person again. And I think that this is perfectly fine. If you don't want to play against somebody anymore because you didn't have a good time because they were being that guy or that gal or whatever, there's nothing wrong with that. If they come up to you at the shop and you're there to play and you've got your game and they're like, hey, I'm in here to play. Let's play again like we did last time 3 weeks ago or whatever. You can just say, no, I'm not interested. I mean, and if they ask why, you can say, well, I'm waiting for somebody else. You can make something else up, or you can just say, I didn't enjoy my game that I had last time. You don't have to get into a fist fight with them, but you can just say, I didn't enjoy playing you last time, so I'm looking for somebody else. If you want to edge back a little bit and say, oh, I'm waiting for somebody else, they're on their way, then that's fine too. You know, a little white lie can be fine for that sort of situation. But the fact of the matter is that hopefully two things will happen. Number one is they will, as they start doing this more and more, generally get less and less games at your local shop. I have seen this firsthand from people who come to the local shop that nobody wants to play anymore. There are people that nobody wants to play anymore because they're really, really good and this person isn't good. And that's fine too. I have no problem sometimes playing against somebody who's really stinking good just to see if I can get like one thing done. Like, can I just take out their HQ? You know, I don't want everything else. I know I'm going to lose, but you know, because they're a tournament player and they're using me as practice, let's say. Although I don't know how good of a practice I am in some situations, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that if the person's attitude is decent and they're playing against you because they're trying to practice for a thing or whatever, but they're a really good player, but their attitude is decent, then it's fine and I'll play against that person. Sometimes, most times, there are some people with some Eldar armies that sometimes in my local area, I'm just like, okay, how about let's just say you won and then we don't play. But I don't know, I need to get a little better about that. But the fact of the matter is that guy, besides the fact that they don't seem to care about whether you're having fun or not, another big thing has to do with attitude. The two go hand in hand, admittedly. You have, if the attitude is good, well, then they probably do care about whether you're having a good time or not. But there are people who can have a good attitude because they're having a really good time, you know, crushing your stuff because you guys were going to play a friendly game, but they brought like some sort of horrible net list with just like, you know, breaking bones. And that's rare. Generally, if the person's got a good attitude and is having a good time playing the game, they are generally also empathically to some degree kind of getting feedback from you. If you're having a good time and I'm having a good time, now we're having a good time. If one person's not having a good time but the other one is, then it generally has a tendency to kind of like trigger in the person who's, you know, maybe having the good time that this guy's not. Now, if it doesn't, if I don't realize that you're having a bad time, then either A, you're a really good person who hides their emotions quite well, or maybe I'm just not paying close enough attention. The easiest ways to not be that guy are to pay attention to your opponent. If your opponent is brand new, then you should try really, really, really hard not to beat them. If this is one of their earliest games and you're actually kind of almost teaching them to some degree and you've been playing for a while, don't just go in there and crush them. I've never felt that you learn most by having your neck stepped on. You know what I mean? Like in gaming, there are some people that are like, well, if I just crush you every time, then eventually you'll just get smarter. And that's like throwing a person into, you know, the lake to teach them how to swim. And, you know, in some situations that might work, but in most it doesn't, and it causes a lot of stress. And again, we're trying to play a game here. So if you're trying to help the person and saying, you know, maybe rather than doing that, you should do this, or you should take a look at the rule. Like if you know their codex or whatever rule system you're playing, if you know it a little bit better than they do, or if you're like, let me take a look at that, and you look at it and go, actually, this power on this card says that you could do this, so you maybe want to think about doing that. Be welcoming to people, be understanding of new players, and understand that if you're both having a good time, that's the main benefit. Another way to not be that guy is to not be so absolutely rigid about the rules. Obviously, if you're playing like in a tournament or something like that, you know, you have to pay attention very closely to the rules. But when you're having a good time at the game shop or at a convention or something like that, understand that kind of maybe, you know, fudging the rules, we both understand that we're doing this. Like, yeah, no, that's that's not cover. That's fine. You'll be fine. When you know it probably does technically count as cover. Those types of things can work out pretty well, I think, in your favor, because if you are always a fun player, somebody who people enjoy playing at the local shop and stuff like that, and you both have a good time, you're going to get return business, for lack of a better term. I see a lot of that guys who are at the local shops who will sit around and not have anybody to play with because the entire shop already realizes that this is not a fun play, that this is a that guy. I see people at local shops sometime who post on, Facebook all the time, like, hey, looking for a game, and they get no responses. Or they post on any kind of different social media, hey, I'm looking for a game at the local shop or whatever, and no responses. That's always a big indicator. So if you are playing to help your opponent really enjoy the game, you're not really playing to win. You're trying to make sure that we're both having a good time. You will find that you get called into more games. You'll get more people that'll reach out and be like, hey, let's play again. That was a lot of fun. Now, if you're just letting people step on you all the time and everything like that, well, that's a different story. But really, again, it's not something that matters. Whether you win or lose a game of tiny little plastic or metal or resin toy soldiers on a tabletop full of fake scenery doesn't really matter to your life, or at least it shouldn't. And that's kind of coming back to what I was saying before. If this is a thing where winning is the most important thing to you, maybe you need to take a kind of a look back at kind of what's going on with you and think a little bit differently about it, because getting more enjoyment out of the game for both you and your opponent, it's kind of a golden rule situation. If you're really considering what your opponent's doing and having a good time with, they should be doing the same to you, and now you're both going to have a good time. But thinking about having a good time and not being that guy and just trying to win at all costs can really help you get more games in, and probably will make people like you a little bit better at the local shop, and that's always a good thing.